Sunday morning to you, and welcome into Weekend Recharge. I'm LaRosa.
And I'm Paul Goodlow. Well, a system festering in the Gulf of Mexico is now shaping up to be a real rainmaker for areas of Texas all the way through Florida and areas northward. Now, this is meanwhile, an 878-mile long stretch of the East Coast from New York to Florida. Well, you're also taking a beating from a storm just offshore. And also,
Right, so we're looking at right now a fetch of moisture. And it's a long fetch stretching out into the Atlantic, and it's making a beeline right into the coast of Carolina and Virginia. There's nothing stopping it. So we've got the moisture and certainly the winds, and we're seeing some of that heavy rain right now, Outer Banks, inland North Carolina. But it is all about the duration, where those winds are coming from, and how long they've been coming from this direction. And then, of course, the force of it. You have still gusts at Cape Hatteras at about 23 miles per hour, but pretty much due east at 13 miles per hour. And you see what's to the west of that. It's just all water, so all of that water is getting pushed, and this is day after day after day. So no surprise that we're seeing some coastal flooding. That would be an understatement. Now we've got the full moon that's going to be a factor as well, especially during high tide.
Yeah, kind of a double whammy there.
Right.
With that high and punishing waves continuing to batter the mid-Atlantic coast at this hour, reaching heights upward to 5 to 7 feet in spots.
We have coastal flood watches and high surf advisories in place, including in Hampton Roads of Virginia, and that's where we find our Mike Sedell live for us this morning. And Mike, very similar scene to yesterday, and that's the problem. Conditions are still blustery and pushing that water on shore.
The best of beach days there, and it's not quite October yet.
We've got nor'easters that'll be, coming down the pipeline eventually. So I guess, right, you think of that east wind that's driving all of this, and that keeps those coastal areas on the cool side too. Let's first talk about the coastal flooding. We have a number of these warnings up from North Carolina, Virginia, into Maryland, and into Delaware and New Jersey. So it is along the east coast. It is that driving easterly wind. What that means, especially during times of high tide, any of those back roadways that tend to flood out when there's an extra high tide, that's going to be affecting you. And that includes from Atlantic City, Toms River, even the western end of Long Island, again, all the way down to Rehoboth Beach, and as we've seen from Ocean City, Maryland, down to Cape Hatteras. And there it is, that surface low, and then you have those easterly winds driving in off the Atlantic. It's got plenty of moisture, so locally heavy rainfall still an issue. So you've got that. Right now, the Outer Banks, it's cloudy, it is gray, it is blustery, but you do have some pockets of that heavier rain. At least that is offshore. Still tracking some showers associated with this right along Interstate 81. So if you're traveling northbound out of Roanoke over the next few hours, that's going to be one of your issues. On top of that, if you're inspired to go into the ocean, not that great of idea because we have such a high risk of rip currents. Again, all the way from some New England coastal areas, including Nantucket, all the way down to Wilmington and into South Carolina. So that's going to be an issue. No surprise, Paul, we're looking at 15 to 20 foot waves offshore, but you see some of those swells making it closer to land. You're still looking at 6-10 foot waves here.
Well, the same system bringing rain to Atlanta yesterday. That's changing though in Atlanta. You might notice this morning as you got out Tuesday, although the good news is with this is many areas of southeast, I wouldn't say a drought, but running below average for rainfall. That's the good news.
So there is that for sure, but all this tropical moisture from the Gulf is moving into areas of Florida, as you mentioned. And we actually have Don Harrigan with the National Weather Service in Tallahassee with us.
And thanks for joining us this morning, Don. And as I mentioned, some areas are definitely on the drier side, not a full-fledged drought across parts of Florida, southern Georgia, lower Alabama. But again, we could see quite a bit of rain with this tropical tap of moisture.
Yeah, correct. Good morning to you. We do have some rainfall deficits over the past couple of months.
41 degrees, so getting in the mid-30s. Yes, it was cooler than average, but a lot of people are saying, yeah, bring it here in Maine. We like the cold air.
And it's the first weekend of fall, right? So it might be just on time. But, some folks are already wondering about what kind of winter they may be in for.
Now, check this out. Yesterday, Baltimore Bill, it's actually a weather predicting crab, made his prediction. I'm thinking crabs should be eaten and not listened to. But either way, this crustacean walked a plank at the Inner Harbor. And if Bill went left, it meant perhaps a warm fall. If he went right, it meant an early winter. So what did he do? I guess you can watch us to find out. Right on through the middle and even the latter part of this week, so summer continues across much of the Southwest.
Despite what the calendar says, right? It just hasn't felt that like fall with all these warmer temperatures above normal. So what effect will that have when you shop?
Well, here with us again this morning is business weather expert Paul Walsh on the economics of sweater weather on the heels of a very recent forecast factor survey. And thanks for joining us, Paul. Can you give us kind of a brief overview of what this survey was about?
Well, guys, what we did is
It is 5:30 as Weekend Recharge rolls on. I'm LaRosa.
And I'm Paul Goodlow. We're along a big stretch of the East Coast this hour. We're dealing with some big problems for persistent storm system offshore. Now, this system has pounded the Carolinas, parts of Virginia, the mid-Atlantic with some pretty powerful surf, some high winds, not to mention a lot of flooding rain as well. Beach erosion has been a continuous problem so far this weekend. And check out this.
Actually talked to Kelly Beatty with Sky and Telescope later about the lunar eclipse. But yes, when it comes to high tides and the flooding and the coastal flooding that we're seeing here, it definitely has an impact. So we'll talk about that. But yes, we certainly have the rain, and you see where it's coming from still. That easterly flow and that driving wind and wave action is what is leading to all of that coastal flooding, not to mention the rip current risk, which is all the way from New England, Nantucket, down through the Jersey Shore, the Outer Banks, all the way down into coastal South Carolina as well. So heightened risk of rip currents along with that coastal flooding because of the driving wind and waves. Not a good day to be out on the water, but actually in a lot of places the water's coming to you.
Yeah, in fact, some homes, water's coming to and under a lot of these homes as well because of the high punishing waves. It's not only across North Carolina, as we showed you, but also even up towards Virginia as well this hour.
So those advisories are in place. Hampton Roads, Virginia, certainly one of the spots. That's where we find Mike Seidel live
Hello.
this morning. Hello, Mike. It's good to see at least a little bit of sunshine on your face, but that scene behind you is still pretty wicked.
It says like competitive eating. I mean, for some people, that's their thing.
Right?
It's not my bag.
Oh, it's fun, though.
I'm not going to nurture a giant gourd growing in the...
but they're kind of fun to look at. That's
True.
kind of fun.
But, I mean, weighing over a ton.
I know.
That's a lot of pumpkin pies.
That's a lot of pumpkin.